Guys, welcome to class. I was telling you more than just yesterday that I've got Bill Arance with us today. Bill and I worked together a long time ago. It would have been 1996, actually. I think, Bill, if I remember correctly.
I'll trust you for
Um,
that.
yeah, on a small project that played in a Chinese theme park a long time ago, and we've been compatriots for a long time, and I asked him to come and talk to you guys today. He's been doing this even longer than I have, and just one of the things that I love about bringing in people that have been doing it for a long time is they give a lot of perspective on what you can expect working in the animation and visual effects industry, and what it takes to get hired, what it takes to stay being hired. And so I'm going to introduce Bill to you guys. If you guys wouldn't mind turning your cameras on so he can see you too, that would be awesome. Um, there we go. Yeah. Cool. All right. Cool. I'm starting to see. Here we go.
So you want me to start yapping?
All right. So I'm going to introduce Bill. How are you doing today? Where are you joining us from today?
I am in my studio at home. The company that I work for right now gives us the option to work from home or from the office in Burbank. I've mostly been working from home because we've been doing some remodeling to the house and wanted to keep an eye on that. And rarely enough, it's been really, really raining here. And if I don't have to be on the road and gambling with my life, because we don't know how to drive in the rain out here. So it's nice to have the studio environment here at home. My machine is basically used as a portal to tap me into my work machine that's on a rack somewhere in, I think, Montreal or Vancouver. Uh, and I work with about 40 other artists right now. And it's a real interesting thing that's grown out of the whole pandemic lockdown era, that we've learned uh, the 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 value of working from home and having that option.
Absolutely. Don't you think that I mean, like going back to when back into the or mid '90s, late '90s, when we could have been doing it at that point, there was no, there was an absolutely like, nope, it's all being worked from a studio. Everybody comes in, all the data is locked down, and it has surprised me how miraculously, as a result of COVID, hey, it's cool. Everybody can work from home now.
Yeah, and the big thing that started happening to even the smaller shops. I mean, if you wanted to stay competitive, you had to have the non-disclosure statements. You had to have the security protocols where you couldn't just walk in and out of rooms unless you had the security pass card to get you in there. In some environments, if you're doing Marvel shows and such, the high security risk jobs, you can't have your cell phone with you and stuff like this. And it was like really tight. The non-disclosure statement starts at about, if you screw up, we can sue you for up to $1 million. And I don't know too many artists that have $1 million to be sued for, but if you own a house, you're going to lose it. So that was always incentive enough for me. But then during the lockdown, it was like, yeah, if you could just send us some pictures of what your work environment's going to be like, and if you have windows and stuff, and if you can have curtains, and do you have any kids that are going to be in and out of your space? And all of a sudden, all of these security protocols just kind of like, we'll take you at your word. We just got to get this done. And it's that whole thing where the industry is a money making machine, like most
Yeah,
industries are, but this one is a monster. And they couldn't stop. They couldn't stop.
yeah,
But they did slow down dramatically. We were all kind of like grabbing for scraps off the table. I was limping along from one freelance job to another. Some of them were overlapping. And we all talked about, when this storm of COVID passes, uh, it's going to be like a gold rush around here because this studio likes this industry likes to make money. and they're going to have a lot of catching up to do. And that's exactly what happened. The only thing that we were wrong about is we underestimated the level of work, the tsunami of work that was coming. And first and foremost, I want to welcome you, each and every one of you, personally welcome you to the tribe. I mean, if you're doing advanced learning like this, taking these kind of courses, you're on a really good path to become competitive in this industry. When Greg and I were growing up, they didn't have classes like this. I mean, I started as I trained as a traditional animator, pencil on paper, flipping and drawing each frame, 24 frames a second. And I trained with the Walt Disney Character Animation Program at California Institute of the Arts. Did 3 years of that and ran out of money. Stumbled around a little bit, but got my first job working on a project up at ILM as an airbrush artist. You know, I was animating storyboards. And if you would have told me when I was going out to be an animator that I was going to wind up as a visual effects airbrush artist, I didn't even know what that meant. So it's good to keep your mind open to opportunities that you may not even recognize. I mean, the job you may excel at, the job that you retire from, there's a good possibility that it hasn't even been invented yet. The technology is moving so quickly that in my lifetime, I've had to reinvent myself like, I want to say 4 or 5 times, because when I was an airbrush artist, there weren't too many of us. And my first big break was working on the original feature Tron, where there was a lot of visual effects airbrush work going on in that. And it was done by myself and another guy that I'm still friends with after all these years. And as I was getting more and more into my career, making more money than a guy in his early 20s has any right to make, or even knows what to do with, I got cocky. And, you know, people were starting to tell me, you know, because we had just gotten off Tron, and Tron had some computer graphics in it, some computer animation in it. And people would say, you know, the computer's going to, you know, do your job soon enough. And I was stupid, cocky. And I said, there's no way a computer can do what I do. And they had showed me samples and stuff, and I wasn't even worried about it. And I just stuck to my guns. I didn't have to learn anything new. And then one day I was at Disney Studios working there, and one of the matte painters said, "You were an airbrusher, right?" And I said, "Yeah, still am." And they said, "Oh, you'll love this." And the guy had the computer that they had set up, and the early stages of a Wacom tablet with a pen. And this guy took his pen and just brushed it across this Wacom tablet, made a beautiful airbrush grad. And it felt like I looked over my shoulder and this dragon was about to take my head off. Overnight, I lost my job. Wow. They didn't need anybody with my elite specialty. The computer basically had taken away my job overnight, and not just mine. When the digital tsunami hit, it wiped out whole industries. And if you didn't know how to keep your head above water or improvise, adapt, and overcome, a lot of people lost their careers. Some of them cross-trained into computers, as I did. And some people just thought, well, this is a good time for me to retire. I don't want to deal with this computer stuff. So the fact that you guys are coming in, hitting the ground running in a program that's teaching you all of the programs that we're using now is phenomenal. Because back in the day, this is before the internet. We were all training ourselves we were like buying our computers and getting into the software and teaching ourselves. And there wasn't any of this digital networking, this social networking where you could like do a chat group and compare notes. You were going over to people's houses and looking over their shoulder, and they would come over to your house and we'd swap tricks. And it was the Wild West. And for a while there, I got good enough. I focused on modeling and mapping. I got good enough to where my studio at home, you could have put a bucket on the other side of my desk to catch the money coming out of it. I mean, I was turning away work, and it was just this wild frontier of opportunity. but you had to be able to recognize the opportunity. I'm getting way ahead of myself here, kind of, by talking about the past. So, and I'm going to do that. I'm not a linear timeline, okay? The things I want to talk to you guys about are the kinds of things that Greg and I wish they'd have told us in film school.
Absolutely.
Because when you're in the school environment, as you guys are right now, man, savor it, okay? You're in a nurturing environment where it's this environment where, like, hey, I got a camera, you got a barn, let's make a movie. The interaction you have now, the freedom you have now, it's not going to really be there as prevalent in the professional industry. You're going to get into some good shops and you're going to get into some bad shops, but you're always going to be dealing with pretty decent people, members of our tribe. And I call it my tribe because I suffered in high school, couldn't wait to get out of it. I didn't feel like I belonged. I felt like I was totally wrong. I felt I was the one that was weird. And when I finally got turned on to California Institute of the Arts, I knew immediately, these are my people. These people watch the same movies I watch. They laugh at the same jokes that I laugh at. These are the people that I need to hang around with and grow with. And CalArts at that time, and still does, had the film school, that the character animation program was part of it. And it had dance school, music school, fine arts. And it was just being surrounded by artists. And so learn to recognize your tribe and learn to be a good member in good standing. Everybody who's a civilian, people outside of the art industry, they have a preconceived notion of what artists are like, and they're always wrong. We don't even know what we're like, okay? What I've come to learn after over 40 years doing this is my responsibility as an artist is to leave the world a little bit prettier than the one I walked into. And I can do that by making pretty pictures, by entertaining, by having moments like this with people and helping them carry that torch and make the world a better place. And now I'm getting a little bit heady, but be aware that the people that you're with right now, I've worked with thousands of people, countless of very, very talented artists, all good people. And I worked on countless of jobs, and I've lost each and every job. Each and every job I've ever had, I've lost over 40 plus years. But the people remain, okay? You'll run into the same people over and over again. Some of them drop away, some of them turn into producers or directors, but they're still members of the tribe. And the jobs go away either because occasionally I got tired of them or occasionally they got tired of me, but mostly you just finish them and they go away and you're hunting for that next job. And the best thing that I can tell you, if I only had 2 minutes left, the best advice I can give you, and it's going to sound totally stupid, to get a job, to keep a job, is, you might want to write this down, show up. Show up. Yeah. And I mean, show up, engage yourself, participate, contribute, go all in. Yeah. Because getting the job is hard. It's a different animal now. You're putting out your electric packages in social networking and all of this other stuff. You're doing Zoom call interviews and it's all awkward. It's hard. But the hard part is keeping the job and turning that into the next one.
Right.
Most of my experience comes from years as a freelance artist, where it's a very gypsy existence. You're going from one job to the next, to the next, to the next, and you're networking and all of this other stuff. And the cool thing about moving on to the job is you may lose the one you just had, it goes away, but the contacts you make, the experience you had, the things that you learned, and you better be learning, you take with you into the next one. And it gets to be a rhythm. And I had a couple of staff positions early in my career, but you come to learn that a staff position, yeah, you get the benefits of a medical package, 401ks, all of that other benefit stuff. But make no mistake, you can still be called into that room and say, hey, this has been great, but Friday is going to be your last day. The only difference is they have to show your contract to a lawyer first to make sure they can do that, but they can get rid of you just like they can if you're a freelancer. The unique thing about being a freelancer, because I'm all about assets and liabilities, pros and cons. Once I made peace with that dragon of, I know the day I start my freelance job, I know when I'm going to lose it. I know when it's going to go away. Right. If I do a good job, they might extend me a week, a month, a couple of months, but then it's gravy. Because if I know when I'm going to lose that job, I know how to budget the money I'm making on that job. And I don't spend money I don't have. And you very, very quickly learn the difference between what you want and what you need. And for a while, you're just going to be getting what you need. You're going to get what you need. You're going to squirrel away your money and to hold you over between jobs. Now, I say all that based on the life that I had a few years ago. Back in the day, and it wasn't that long ago, it was a little bit pre-COVID, we had what was called pilot season, where a studio will take on a few show pilots and you work on a pilot for like 4 months. If you're in a busy shop, you might work on 2 or 3 pilots. And if the pilot gets picked up and you were a good artist, now you've got like a job for a season, maybe longer than that. I worked on Grey's Anatomy, not my kind of show, but I had fun for like 10 years, plus some other shows. But then when Netflix and all of the streaming venues came along, where they're just flooding the world with content, and I hate to call what we do content, but it's the shorter word. Now that they're flooding the industry with all of these venues and the streaming services, there's no longer a pilot season. It's year round, man. It's year round. So I think for people coming into the industry as early as now, for you guys, there's no season. There's no waiting for the merry-go-round to slow down and hop on. It's spinning, and you won't have to, I don't think you're going to have to worry as much about the between job stigma that freelancing has. The other thing is, right now, I'm happy to tell you, there's more work than there are artists. So you guys are being groomed for an industry that's waiting to have you. And that's the main important thing. And when I ask you to be engaged, from what I understand, you guys are getting really good at problem solving, which is a very good skill set to have, because a lot of what we do is solving problems. And one thing that's good to realize that they didn't tell us in film school, and this reverts back to the lofty self-impression we have of an artist, like I need my artistic freedom and I'm not going to compromise myself by doing that. Hey, that's cool. And I help defend that. But when you're getting paid, it's a job, and you are now a service provider. And in the early part of your career, you know, your client is going to be your supervisor. And your supervisor is usually somebody like Greg, who's earned his stripes, as I like to say. They weren't ordained as a supervisor because they were a producer before, or they were making sandwiches, taking sandwich orders on the last job. These are people that have come up through the ranks. They've learned the software. They know their stuff. They know the job. And if you're lucky, you're following a supervisor like that. And when your supervisor asks you to do something, be all ears, listen to what they've got to say. And a lot of times they're going to come at you with, like the next day, they're going to come at you with something else and say, look, I'm going to need you to drop what you're doing. We're now going to do this. And some artists have the tendency to say, well, that's not going to work, and it's not going to do this, and that doesn't look right to me. Stop. Usually those discussions that you want to have with the supervisor, you have to picture that the supervisor's already had those discussions with the effects director, with the director. And believe me, he knew when the idea came down the pipe, it was a dumb idea. And he did his best tactical, political way of talking them out of that, negotiating with them. And he came down off the mountain with the best victory he had. So by the time the supervisor comes to you and says, I need you to drop what you're doing. We're going this direction now. The words that need to come out of your mouth are something like, no problem. By when do you need it? Because anything that you say, he's already told them. And it just makes for a better workflow. And these are the kind of things that make you recognized as an artist, that you're part of the solution. You're not part of the problem. They don't want to explain things to you unless it's absolutely necessary, because they just don't have the time. When they have the time, they will explain it to you, because it's important that you understand exactly what's going on. But ours is an industry of change, in change. And one of the things I came to notice a long, long time ago was, when somebody is changing something, and this goes for you too, when you're working on your own stuff, do you want to change something to make it different? Or are you changing it to make it better? Because I've seen clients burn through their schedules and burn through their money doing different. I can cut off your left hand. That's different. It won't make it better. So if you find yourself in a position when you're dealing with your own stuff, or dealing with a team, and you get it in your heads like, we need to change this, be honest with yourself. Are we making it better, or are we making it different? And there's a lot of things you can do to save yourself a lot of heartache by just staying the course and staying true to your original goal. Any questions yet? Because I do ramble.
I mean, dude, it's gold thus far. I mean, seriously. And if you guys, you really should be listening to what he's saying, because every single thing that's come out of his mouth, I have personally found to be true in my career, 100%. And, and Bill really was one of the beginning parts of my, not the very, very beginning, but an early part of my career. And, we would have these conversations, a long time ago, and they've all turned out to be true. So anybody got any questions for him thus far? Sure,
I do.
Sure.
How long have you been between jobs, and how easy is it to budget between jobs?
In the beginning, it was a disaster. When I was working on Tron, it was my first screen credit. It was a cutting edge movie. Nobody had ever done anything like that before. I had been working for 6 months with Disney Studios, and I had saved all my money, and I was going to buy a new car. It was going to be the new Firebird, the Firebird that you saw in the original Knight Rider. It was just it was a kick-ass looking car. And so I had my money saved up for that. As soon as the job was over, the union went on strike for 4 months. And I ended up using that money to keep me out of my parents' house on my own. I ended up doing odd jobs, everything from like running courier to sitting at the supermarket asking people if they wanted to sample the Calistoga mineral water. It's very tasty. And learn to swallow your pride in every possible flavor it comes in. Because in the beginning, you're going to take some hits like that. And the best thing I can say is, I don't think the between job, if you're a good artist, solid performer, great work ethic, and I cannot emphasize the work ethic enough, because everybody can learn the software. YouTube is full of all the tricks. Everybody can learn that stuff if they want to, if they can apply themselves. What stands you out among everybody else is show up, do what you say you're going to do what you've been asked to do, and finish what you did, and be able to defend your work and be a problem solver. And it's like, it doesn't sound like much, but you'd be surprised how many people we run into that they kick ass. They're the ace of animation. They're terrific modelers, but I'll tell you what, I don't care how good you are. You're no good to me if you don't show up. I would rather take somebody who kind of knows the software, but has the right spirit. You look at their portfolio, they're real, and you can see after some time, you can see, okay, there's an artist in there. This person's good. They want to do lighting, but Jesus, man, you're a hell of a modeler. Have you thought about modeling? And I'll take a strong work ethic that I can shape in my image over a guy who like knows everything, but is a flake. Because I've been a supervisor before, and anytime an artist flakes, I'm the one who has to roll in their crap. And I work very, very hard to make sure the only crap I roll in is my own. Mm-hmm. Even that's not comfortable. So as far as budgeting goes, I'll tell you this. My formula was, when you get a job, at that time it was like, don't buy anything unless you absolutely need it, like food, water, okay, maybe a new pair of shoes because these have holes in them, sort of a thing. But don't buy anything that you don't need until you can pay your rent for 6 months. Right. In the beginning, it might be 3 months, okay? And then I progressed to the point where, okay, if I lose this job tomorrow, my whole thing is, if I get hit by the bus tomorrow and I can't do my job, or if Friday is my last day, I'm up to the point now where I don't have to get out of bed for a year. I can feel sorry for myself and cry in my beer for a year before I have to go out and look for a job, knowing I'm not going to lie in my bed and cry in my beer. I'm going to be out there hustling for the next gig. Right. So just learn to set aside a war chest for that rainy day. Be very disciplined about things that you need and things that you want, and knowing the difference. And you'll kind of get a feel for it in the beginning. And that's the best advice I can give you right now.
I would say, to add to that, is that the lean years don't necessarily, they don't last all that long. You know, if you follow what he's saying, if you show up and you do your work and you've got a good work ethic, you get hired onto the next show pretty quickly. You know, they do come. Yeah. And so, but you know, he's totally right. You know, oftentimes you're going to work as a 1099, you know, understand which in 1099 means you're a freelancer, which means they're not taking taxes out of your paycheck. Yeah. You're going to have to set aside money for that. That's a huge deal, you know? So
yeah, that's a good safety tip. And I'm glad you reminded me of that one. Standard operating procedure out here in California for me, when I'm doing 1099 and I get that paycheck and oh my God, it's fat. I take 30% and just put it in a bank account where I don't look at it, because that 30% is what I'm going to pay taxes with at the end of the year.
Absolutely.
And I'm embarrassed to say how long it took me to do that before I realized that's what I need to be doing, because when the taxes come, man, and it's like, where did all the money go? Yeah, good question. If you can't answer the question, you need to be setting aside 30% in the beginning. Yeah. And what's fascinating for me is I worked freelance for a long, long time. And then I got a staff position. It was the best paying job I've ever had, working with a terrific boss, a terrific crew. And the job at that time lasted for 3 years, which was unheard of for me. And one day they called us into the conference room, and I walked in the conference room, and there was my boss, my boss's boss, the head of HR, with a stack of manila envelopes like this on the end of the desk. They may as well have lined the walls with plastic, because I knew we're going to get whacked. And they asked us to sit down, and I chose to stand because I knew this wasn't going to take long. They let us all go. They let us all go. And I was gut punched because I'd gotten soft. And I promised myself, I swore to myself, that doesn't happen again. Just like I promised myself when I lost my job as an airbrusher, don't ever get complacent. In our industry, complacency kills. Okay. If you're feeling comfortable in your job, you're at risk. That means you're not learning anything. And what I've learned to do now is, now I have what I consider my dream job. I'm staff, I'm making really good money, and dominantly I'm modeling and I'm mapping. I'm chief modeler in our LA office. But I'm always in my freelance state of mind, where don't spend money you don't have, don't get stuff you don't need. Friday can be your last day. And The job I had before this one, I had for 10 years. And I swear to God, in the trunk of my car, I kept a legal box. I kept a legal box. And you'll see when you work in shops, maybe you're already set up like this in your homes and stuff. People move into a shop, even the freelancers will do this, and they'll set up the toy robots, all their little knickknacks, pictures of their families and all that kind of stuff. It's all cool. It's a home away from home. You're going to spend a lot of time in that environment, make it your own. I get it. Me, I had this thing where like, I want to be able to pack my desk in under 5 minutes and be out of here if it's that day. And in the 10 years I was at that shop, I had 4 different cars, and every car that I had that box in the trunk. And the day they gave us the notice at the 10-year job that, look, we're going to kind of wind down and we want everybody to kind of take a leave of absence. And somebody asked, well, should we pack our desks? Oh, no. Don't pack your desks, because it'll look depressing if we bring a tour through here. It's like, yeah. And as soon as the guy left the room, I packed my desk in under 3 minutes and I was gone, because I knew what that meant. And sure enough, 4 days later, we all got the letter in the mail. We all got the phone call. We were out of jobs. And at that time, I had enough money to not worry about working for about a year. But I had a job. This was the best. The same time I was getting the emails with the exit documentation that I had to sign for these guys, I was getting the emails from my next job, starting my contract. And it was like, it was the first time in my career where when the guy was called me up to let me go, officially let me go, I was able to just kind of sit there with a smile on my face and go, yeah, this must be really hard for you to have to tell me that. And you just have to have that frame of mind that the job will go away. It can go away. It's nothing personal. It's nothing personal, unless you're a flake, unless you're being a jerk at the office. It's not because the work you've done, it's usually going to be something so out of your control, so out of your influence that you really can't take it personal. Any other questions so far? Because I don't want to go into a dark place. I got more uplifting things to talk about.
How about talking a little bit about like go ahead, Ryan.
All right. So like, I guess versus how you worked back then to the age we're in now, do you feel like that you have to do a lot more, I guess, work at home? I guess also too, given after, what happened at the beginning of 2020 with COVID and everything, like, is there a lot more freelance jobs? Like there's mainly like you're staying at home and doing Zoom calls or whatever you're using for online calls, video calls to work.
What's interesting right now, Ryan, is that I've got a network of artists, like 5 of them maybe, and the list is shortened, that when somebody wants to hire me and I'm already busy, I can refer 2 or 3 other guys, or one of them's a lady, 2 or 3 other artists, and to take the job. And, we were all kind of freelancer and freeloading. But after COVID, I would call these people and say, oh no, I just got made staff over at Sony. Oh no, I just got made staff over at Disney. And it was like, that was the after the storm of the pandemic, and we all said, there's going to be like a gold rush. We didn't picture that it'd be this aggressive, where they were immediately, if you knew your shit, if you showed up and you had a reputation or you had the right work, they were putting staff positions in front of people immediately because they didn't want somebody else to get them.
Yeah.
And so right now there isn't that much bouncing around. And I've been doing this long enough that when they made me an offer, I had in my head, like, I've been freelancing for them for a couple of months, and always be proactive too, good and bad. I had an idea of, okay, if they make me an offer, what's my number going to be? And that's different for everybody. And I don't want to get into the dynamics of how much you charge or whatever. That's another discussion for another day. But you got to have an idea in your head that when they call you in the office and they say, look, we're ready to offer you a staff position or this, that, and the other, and we're going to pay you this much. You need to know, is that good or is that bad? Right. And I had this number in my head where I'm not greedy. It's just me and my wife. We don't have kids. We don't have dogs. So we need this much, and I'd like that much because I want to set money aside. And when they made me the offer, I didn't even have to look at my notes. It was like way better than anything I was thinking about. So it was like, they said, well, take some time to think about it. And I said, okay, I will. I want the job. I'm in. Count me in. And so right now, there's still a few people out there freelancing because they want to be. Some people, they just get so used to it that they like bouncing from job to job, because if you go to a job and, ooh, supervisor's a jerk. Well, I can do a jerk for 6 months. I can do a jerk standing on my head. I'll be out of here. And you move on to another job. And that's how you get to know what the good shops are and what the bad shops are. And there's a lot more good shops out there now. And it's a healthier work environment, because when Greg and I were growing up, most of them were mills, shops that sprung up to get a show done, and then they shut down when it was over. They weren't looking for the long haul. They were looking to just build, throw a bunch of artists into the seats, grind the hell out of them, get what they wanted, and then go out. And it's like boot camp. You learn good things, you meet great people, you learn new tricks. But nowadays, that sweatshop environment isn't that prevalent like it used to be. People want to hold on to their talent. They know how valuable you are, because learning our stuff is tricky. Staying updated in the software, staying current in the software is tricky. Yeah. And like Greg says, if you're good, if you show up, if you're consistent, hiring people is a pain in the ass, because the guy who's interviewing you in the shops that I work at, like, I'll be modeling and they say, hey, we got this artist coming in, he's a generalist, we think he'd be a good modeler, can you sit in on us in the interview? Okay, so I got to drop what I'm doing and interview somebody. Then you got to write something up. Hiring people is a pain in the ass. So if it's easier to pick up the phone and say, let's get that guy back that we had last time, those 2 girls that were doing the lighting work, one of them was a really good modeler, get her on the phone. That's much easier than taking somebody cold. And taking somebody out of a university, a program such as yours, that's a plus too, because you're learning the software that we use, and that's always going to be a benefit. I don't know if that over answered your question or not, Ryan. So
no, that helped out a lot right there.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah. What do you use to stay current?
What do I do to stay current?
Yes.
I come home to my wife every day, and because I found that the hardest part about losing a job is having to come home and tell the missus, hey, I'm going to be home for a while, sort of a thing. That keeps me hungry. The software I'm using right now is Maya, Substance Painter, getting back into ZBrush, looking at Blender, and just keeping my mind challenged. Currently at work, they've got me acting as a supervisor, working liaison between ourselves and our team in Mumbai in India, which is, I've done it before, but it's more clerical and supervisor type clerical work, but I'm here to help. So what I do to stay current is, on my own time at home, I'm working on my own projects. It's nice to work on something when you don't have the gun of a deadline to your head. And I learn tricks at home that make me more valuable at work. I can't stress it enough about complacency and feeling comfortable. And at your level, still in school, I'll tell you this too, and that is, allow yourself to fail. Try stuff and allow it to blow up in your face, because yeah, failing bad, but failing is how you learn. It's the whole thing about touching the hot stove. Somebody can tell you don't touch it, but you touch it, you burn. It's like, okay, got it. I ain't going to do that again. And some of the most freedom I've had is I got a job I was doing on the first season of Picard. I had to build a city. Client didn't know what they wanted. We had a rough idea. We saw some concept sketches that were meh, and I was putting it together. And my supervisor at the time is a guy that I'd worked many years with, shoulder to shoulder. He was an artist, and then he was the manager of the 3D department at the job I had for 10 years, and now he's a supervisor. And I was showing him kind of what it was up to, and he said, "Hey, you know what, man? Don't be afraid to fail. Just do that voodoo that you do, and let's just roll with it." And all of a sudden, I felt this weight lifted off of me. Like, yeah, let me try this. I work for a very good company that they're as picky about choosing their clients as they are about choosing their artists, which gives us more time to do stuff. My last big project was the last season of Westworld. I built this white tower that was out in the harbor of New York, and it's, I guess, where the robots lived. I didn't watch the show much, but they gave me a year to do that. They gave me a year, and it was myself and a Houdini artist who draped this beautiful, intricate web work on it. We built the tower and the city underneath it. And to have a year to do something was so unheard of, because when I was working at smaller shops, it would be like a good shot, you're going to have 2 weeks to work on it. A lot of it was like, we're going to want to see something by the end of business day. And we're hoping to have a rough final by Friday. And you grind. And so now that I've got jobs that they give me so much time to do, well, that's beautiful, but it's a simple trap to start feeling comfortable and cozy and complacent. And I don't want to be complacent. So if I want to keep myself challenged when I'm at home, my wife's an artist. Her studio's at the other end of the house. She's old school, where canvas and paint, no undo button, same tools they've had for centuries. And so when she's in her studio, I'm in mine, and I'm trying shit out, letting it break and challenging myself there. Lately, I've been challenged enough at work, so I just come home and, I don't want to do anything. But artists, if you're doing this right, it's not what we do, it's what we are. Because every job that I've ever lost, I give myself like a day to feel sorry for myself, maybe 2, depending on how long the job was. But then after that, I'm going to be right here in front of my workstation doing for free what they would pay me to do. Because I can't not do this. I'm always building something. I like to see neat stuff. And at work, working with younger talent, and which is most of them, because I'm the oldest guy in the room probably, there's times where like the client changes their mind. They're throwing out this whole thing and everybody's like bummed out. And it's like, okay, now we got to rush to get this other thing done. And it's like, my rules are, okay, so they threw our scene out. Did they ask for the money back? No. If they're not asking for the money back, then nobody gets hurt. I got paid to do a job. I did it. They changed their mind. That's not on me. That's on them. And yeah, so we got to work late tonight and tomorrow. And sometimes it has to be a job, because for me, most of the time, they're paying me to have a hell of a good time. And so sometimes I look at it as like, okay, today I'm earning the money because I haven't done anything like this before, and I better learn how to do it and get it done. And so that's my trick for staying. I refer to it as staying hungry. Just keep challenging yourself. Be wary of getting comfortable. And that's not to say that you can't go outside on a 15-minute break, have a cigarette, and get your eyes off of something else, stretch your eyes a little bit, get your mind out of the zone and stuff. But I mean, if long periods of time go by where you're like in this rhythm where you're real comfortable at work, be mindful that that could be a trap. Find ways to challenge yourself. Learn a new language, play a guitar if you don't already. I don't know. Everybody has their different thing. Does that answer that kind of?
That's a great answer, actually.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You sure?
It's really hard. I mean, you can be in this industry 30, 40 years and still, it is a never-ending learning process, and that's honestly, you guys, and I won't take too much time away from Bill, but that's one of the things I love about teaching because I have to know this stuff. I'm like literally, I got here this morning to learn a couple of things about what it is that I want to show you guys because it's important, and you have to stay hungry with it, no matter whether you're teaching, whether or you're working directly in the industry. And you can have some success, and you go, oh, cool, awesome. And that's like you said, and that's where it gets dangerous because it's like, oh man, I just lost that job, and that does happen.
And I
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Do you have a question?
I was just going to say, so let's talk a little bit, if you could, about what you do a fair amount, like for the work that you do. So you talked a little bit about Westworld, but you do a lot of modeling, you do a lot of texture work. That's your sweet spot, right?
Yeah. I was hired as a generalist, and the team I'm working with now, I had worked with before when it was a different company, and they hired me as a generalist, and I ended up just modeling at the first time, and that was when I was freelancing. And at my debrief, at the end of it, they apologized to me, saying, we know that we didn't let you play with lighting or anything else like that, and if we can get you back, we promise. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. I said, if you're going to pigeonhole me anywhere, modeling and mapping is where you can sit me, and I'm fat and happy. Okay. I said, because to me, it's about giving my client, my boss, my company, their money's worth out of me. And I told him, I said, if I'm in there modeling and mapping, you're getting more than your money's worth out of me, especially if I'm working from home. If it wasn't for my wife who walks in at 7:30 and says, weren't you supposed to stop at 6? I would go until the sun comes up. And so this company that I work for, they're very good at recognizing what makes the artist happy, because they get that simple thing that if they're happy, they're doing their best work. And once they're happy, and then you start giving them a little more rope, you start taking them out of their comfort zone. And when you're out of your comfort zone, you're learning. When you're out there on that ragged edge, yeah, you're going to bleed a little bit, but you're going to learn. And they have a really good balance. They also have really good people that they're capable of seeing things in people that they don't see in themselves. And you do this long enough and you'll see that in people. And what I can tell you is have fun with what you're doing, not just because you're in school right now, but if you're not having fun, what's the point? I mean, yeah, the money, whatever. The money comes later. If you're doing something you love to do, you're going to do it a lot. And if you do it a lot, you're going to get good at it. And when you get good at it, it's not much longer than you're better. I've got this thing that I went through in my career where in the beginning I was very competitive. I always was like trying to be better than that guy or that one or that one. And I learned pretty quick, I didn't like what it did to me. I didn't like the person I was becoming. I didn't think I was being a true tribe member at that point, because in order for me to succeed, somebody else kind of had to fail. And what I decided to do, the epiphany I had was, there's always going to be somebody bigger, better, faster, more talented than me. Always. The best thing I can hope for, and I made myself this promise, and I continue to make this promise to myself every day, that I want to go home tonight a better artist than the one who walked in that morning. And I do that every day. And sometimes I don't make it. Sometimes I break even. And sometimes I rock, because I'm competing against myself. I've already learned all the different languages my inner demons talk to me in. So it's a comfortable stress to be under. And sometimes making myself a better artist can be learning a new trick, solving a problem, or talking to guys like a class like yours, and hopefully saying something that allows you to avoid some of the big mistakes that I've made. And what I find is, at the end of the day, as I say, I may have succeeded at being a better artist, or I may have broken even, but I didn't hurt anybody to get there. I can look back over my 40 odd years and know that there aren't any corpses in my wake. I didn't burn anybody to get what I've gotten.
Yeah.
It's just my work. And even when they're, pardon my French, but there's no other word for it. Even when you're working with an asshole, you can learn from them, because sometimes knowing what you don't want to do is more important than knowing what you want to do. And another thing I want to point out, and this is really important, and this is just a trick. We all tend to get deep into our work. I mean, where it's right here. I mean, my nose is bigger than most, but even at the tip of my nose, it's still too close. And you get blinded by it. And I'm a firm believer in the philosophy of, where does your eye go first? When you're looking at your artwork, when you're looking at something that you're rendering, when you look at it, where does your eye go first? And know that it goes there for one of two reasons. Your eye went there either because you rock or because you suck. If you went there because, oh man, that looks cool, I nailed it, yeah, pat yourself on the back, move on. If your eye went there because you suck, because you screwed something up, no hesitation, fix it. Fix it now and move on.
Yep.
That's your instincts talking to you, okay? And a lot of times, especially when you're working from home, working in a vacuum, or even when you're working with a team, it's hard to see that forest for the trees. It's hard to see beyond the tip of your own eyes. And so one of the things that I like to do is I'll take one of my images, I'll screen grab it, I'll turn it into a black and white image, I'll flip it, I'll flop it, I'll reverse it, whatever. And before I go to lunch, I'll set it up as like what do you call it, desktop image, or just a big image, so that when I come back from lunch or when I come back in the morning, I open that image up and it's a completely new image. And where did your eye go first? And this is how you train yourself to look at something of your own with a fresh eye. You're looking at shapes now. You're looking at composition. You're looking at patterns now. And your eye will see things that you weren't seeing before because you were looking at the same thing over and over again. It's this thing that I learned back in the day when we had keys, where if you lost your keys, you're sitting there trying to find your keys. You can't find your keys. And now you're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be late to pick up my girlfriend. And I'm going to have to call the office because I'm not going to be able to show up for work. Where the hell are my keys? Where the hell are my keys? And then your friend or your roommate comes in and says, oh, you mean these keys? And it's like, how did you do that magic trick? And the thing is, that person, they were just looking for the keys. You were worried about how you were going to get to your car and your job and your girlfriend and all this other stuff. And you weren't seeing what the problem was. And that happens to you artistically too. You start focusing on all this bullshit, like the deadline and this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, man, your art will speak to you. The shot you're working on will speak to you. You just got to look at it and you got to listen. And a lot of times when I'm building a model for something, they won't tell me, well, we don't know how close we're going to get to it. We're going to know this. So I start with a model that I know I can get close to. And if I have to, I can get much closer to it with a few repairs. And then when they start giving us the plates and we start dropping my models into shots, I let the shot start telling me what to do. I let the sequence tell me what to do. It's like, okay, we're never going to see this model from the other side. We're never going to see this. We're never going to get that. All these shots are at night now. Yeah, but during the night, does an explosion go off and now we see it? You know, you get all these things with experience. Another pointer I'll tell you about this stuff with clients and with supervisors sometimes, but definitely with clients, it's not about what they want. It's what they're going to want next. When you show them that thing they asked for, they're never, ever, ever going to say, oh my God, you saved my show. Here's an extra bonus. Thank you. You're great. We're always going to call you. No, it's always, you know, this is a nice start is usually what you hear. What if we did this? And what if you did that? And if you've built something, and obviously I'm speaking as a modeler, but just as an artist in general, don't paint yourself into a corner. As you're working on this, start thinking about, if this was my movie and I presented this, what are they going to want to do with this? Are they going to want to brighten it, darken it? Are they going to want it to do this or do that? And I had a boss, and this is during the digital the early days of digital, where I would build something. I would set up a shot and do the layout and build it. And then my boss would come in and say, okay, now I want it to do this. And now I want it to do that. And pretty soon you're massaging it and breaking it and doing stuff. And now I'm taking out the digital duct tape and coat hangers to hold it together. And then the boss comes up to me one morning and he says, okay, now just make it blue. And I make it blue and the thing just falls apart. I'm paraphrasing now, right? But you do that last thing and the model can't hold it. And then the guy will go, well, what happened? All I asked was for blue and it falls apart. And it's like, now you asked it to be bigger. You asked it to bend here. You asked it to do this and you asked it to do that. And I limped along. If I'd have known you wanted this, I would have designed it along my pipeline. Okay. And just know that even when you anticipate your client, you're still going to get kind of into a trap. But you do this enough, believe me when I tell you, you're going to be able to predict the future. I can go into a meeting and know, okay, if we show them this, they're going to ask for that. And just part of your problem solving skills is having that good eye of where your eye goes first and anticipating, being proactive of asking yourself, what are they going to want? They asked for this, but when I give them this, where are they going to go next? And sometimes, as I say, what they don't say, when you're going to go into dailies and you're watching screens and your shots are come up and the voices in the dark are giving you critiques. I've worked many times where like they're having problems with something, and I'm fixing it, I'm slaving it, and this, that, and the other. And then one day you go into dailies and now they're talking about the trees over there and they're talking about the way the sun's setting and they're reflecting on the glass over there. And it's like, hey, they're not saying anything about my model. Yeah, because I won. If they're not talking about it, that means you solved the problem. It's rare that somebody's going to come up to you and go, way to go, you finally nailed it. No, that kudo is going to come as they've moved on. You've won. And a lot of times I come out of dailies and somebody will be kind of depressed, like, well, they didn't say anything about my trees. Dude, because you knocked it out of the park. You know, you don't, if they're talking about it and giving you praise, that's great, but that doesn't happen as often. If they're not talking about it, that's a victory. And to me, the best effects that you do are the ones that people don't see. They go in one eye and out the other, and people don't even know they've been affected. One of the best critiques I've ever gotten was working on a medical show where I was doing a helicopter taking off from an intersection in a night shot, whisking somebody off into the night. And I had the model. All I had to do was give it a repaint and all this other stuff. So my first look at it was just dropping it in with some rudimentary lighting and just making it go through the shot. And in dailies the following morning, the owner of the company, who's got a really good eye, he watches it twice and he says, well, what are we doing to this shot? And my supervisor goes, we're doing the helicopter. And then all of a sudden everybody starts chiming in, well, there's no people in it. It doesn't have the blinky lights. It doesn't hit this, that, and the other. And I've been doing this long enough to where I could say in the dark, I just want to point out that the first reaction to this was, hey, what are we doing to this shot? Okay, this is just my first look. Yeah, I promise I'm going to put in the blinky lights, put the people inside and all of this other stuff. So a lot of the pat on the backs, you got to know where to recognize them, because it's very rare that people will come up to you and celebrate your wisdom, even though you're knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
And that's my hour. I mean, I can talk a little bit, but well, are there any questions? Good. I win.
Trent has one.
What's that?
He's fixing his microphone.
Oh.
It always does this right at the moment. No, I will just agree with Bill on that. Is that it's so often that when someone says, "Oh, I didn't even notice the effects in that show," thank you very much. You know,
Is this
because
working?
that's the job.
It
Yeah,
is
we
now.
Yeah, it's working.
Sorry. Yeah, just want to make sure. What was I can hear myself. What was the is it you?
Making
Just make
sure his
mic is. There we go. What was the most interesting thing you've learned from your career? Like something you would not have expected going in when you first started, kind of thing.
Hmm. That's a good question, man. Um, I'd have to say the reoccurring thing in me is don't get complacent, because I thought I owned the world when I was working on Tron. It was the first time in a big studio environment where people were getting floored with what I was doing and throwing a lot of money at me, and it went straight to my head and my ego. And I was like 21, and it allowed me to be so ignorant, so stubborn, that literally overnight I lost my career. And it was like I promised myself I would never do that again. And as I say, I've gotten better at reading the signs on the wall and reinventing myself, like uh, teaching myself the computer. And I learned on Lightwave 3D, as did Greg. And that taught me that I really liked to model and map, but to survive, I had to be a generalist. Then I had to train myself at all sorts of other things. And just don't get complacent. Don't get cocky, kid. You know, it's that whole thing. And I'll tell you this, a similar question that I've been asked is, what's my favorite show? What is my favorite project that I've worked on? And my answer is always the next one, because the next one has all the promise of being the one that everything that I've learned along this way, that I get to apply it and knock it out of the park. Be prepared that you're never going to finish what you're doing artistically in a production environment. The clients will fall in love with it before you do. And when they say final, you got to drop what you're doing and move on to the next show, move on to the next shot. We never really complete something. And so you never get to like break the tape, spike the ball, you know. It's this thing where like, okay, well, all of this wisdom I'm going to take into the next show, and I'll show you there this trick that I learned, or this new rhythm that I have, and this new wisdom that I have. I'm going to apply it to the next one. And then the next one, maybe you don't get to use any of the new tricks, maybe you do, but the next show, it's like what I think of my wife when she puts a new canvas out there and preps the canvas. It's the most frightening thing you can look at. For a writer, it's that empty page. But that fear comes with that excitement of, this is it. This is my new opportunity to rock. And you should look at all of your projects that way, because again, assets and liabilities, the fact that we don't get to finish something, that we have to walk away from it before we knew it's so much better. Hey, it's okay. Go home and make it better. Work on your own stuff and make it better. You know, and the other thing I'll tell you is be aware of the time. It's trickier to do in the beginning of your career, but you'll get a rhythm for it of how much time it takes you to do something. And what I will tell you is, nobody cares how fast you got it done if it looks like shit. Okay. It's like eating at Arby's sometime. You know, the food always looks better in the menu, but I don't care what it looks like in the menu. What's it taste like? And so you see a lot of guys, a lot of people that'll say, well, you know, I got it done overnight. And it's like, yeah, it looks like it, you know? And so our work speaks for us. Okay. And my design teacher taught me at CalArts, when your work speaks for itself, shut the fuck up. Okay. And it becomes an issue of, what do you want your work to say about you? Because we're never there to defend it. Obviously, you're there in dailies, sitting in the dark, watching it. But if you do other kinds of art forms and it hangs in a museum someplace, or it hangs in a gallery, or you put it out on the internet, you're not there to say, yeah, but I did it overnight. You're not there to say anything. Right. They're looking at you at face value. And always, always be mindful that when you're creating something from nothing, A, that's magic. And B, it's going to speak of you. and it's all about how you want it to represent you. And my work has helped to get me a lot of work. My work ethic has helped me to get a lot of work. But long after I'm gone, it's my work that's going to be there sticking up for itself. So, you know, be mindful of that and treat your work with respect.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question, great answer. And Bill, we'll go as long as you have time. And if you're running out of time, because I know you've got stuff, then we can wrap up. Or if you have a little bit more time, let's.
I got a little bit more time if you got some questions.
Okay. I'll let them ask. If not, I have one for you.
Sure.
You hear me?
Go ahead, Kyle.
Oh, okay. What's the best advice you would give for dealing with discouragement? For like feeling like you're maybe not the best at this?
Oh, perfect.
Dude, that's a great question.
Get used to it. I don't mean to sound callous, but as I say, we have these dragons on our shoulders, and you'll learn every language they speak to you in. Learn to swallow your pride in every flavor that it's coming in. I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I still think, I think we all do. Anybody who's an A+ personality, self-motivated, artistic, creative, we all live in that nightmare that today is the day that they're going to realize I'm a fraud, I'm a fake, and they're going to fire me, and they're going to ridicule me on the internet, and I'm going to die homeless in a box under the freeway. Okay? And I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I work with a guy who I worked with for 10 years. He was my supervisor for a while at another job that I had, and now we're working shoulder to shoulder as artists at what I call my dream job. This guy is a 2-time Emmy winner. He is amazing. He's not only an amazing artist, he's a wonderful technician, a mechanic. He understands code and all that shit that is foreign to me. And when he talks to me about his doubts and his fears, I just shake my head and say, wow, even that guy feels that way. And you know what? Embrace it, because that's part of keeping you hungry. Okay.
Yep.
But at the same time, do not deny yourself those little victories where like you're sitting there in dailies and somebody goes, wow, that looks good. That speaks volumes, you know? And you can sit there and it's going to come at you like a little spark in your chest, and you're going to go, wow, they liked it. Don't feel guilty right after that, okay? Because that's usually what happens. You pick yourself up and then you shoot yourself down because like, no, I got to stay hungry. It's like, no. When you feel that little pit in your heart where somebody liked what you did, or somebody comes up and physically pats you on the back and says, dude, you knocked it out of the park, embrace it, you know, wear it. Don't get cocky, but don't turn around and make yourself feel guilty for that. It's like, take that with you. Because one of the mantras I have in my head now, because as I say, I live with those demons, is when I'm confronted with something, it's like, I'll take a step back, I'll take a breath, and I'll say, you'll figure it out. You always do. I'll figure it out. I always do. And in an environment, in a truly creative environment, when you're working with a good team, be mindful that none of us do what we do alone. Okay? You're working with a team. And all of them have the same insecurities. Some of them are better at masking it, but believe me, they all have it. And so don't be afraid to raise your hand and say, hey, I'm having a problem here, man. Hey, I don't know how to do that. Hey, I don't know what that word means, you know, and chip in, because it makes everybody else feel like, oh, okay, he's revealing a little bit about himself. Maybe I can too. And it makes for a more honest environment. And this comes back to be true to your tribe. Don't bag on somebody because they don't know something, you know, help them, you know, use it as a teaching moment, because on your next job, he might be your supervisor, and it just goes around. So embrace those feelings and use them as part of your workforce, as part of your mindset, as part of your being, because it ain't going anywhere.
It's totally true. It's totally true. I mean, it's called imposter syndrome. Everybody
That's
feels
it.
it.
That's
Everybody
it.
feels like they're gonna figure me out sooner or later. And look, I'll tell you guys, my wife's a psychologist, and she even says this to me too. She's like, at some point they're going to figure out that I'm really not that good of a psychologist, right? And it just, everybody feels it. It doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum of your career, everybody feels it. And so one of the best ways to get through it is literally being vulnerable and saying, I've got a problem with this. And I actually genuinely appreciate that you said something, because I think it speaks to everybody.
And you're going to know when you're dealing with an asshole when they try to exploit that in you,
Yeah.
because we all have it. And to me, it's the cheap shot. It's like hitting a guy when he's down. You don't do it. And that's when you're going to know who's true to the tribe and who isn't. And you'll get clients trying to prey on that, like, oh, is this the best you can do? No, but it's what you can afford, and it's what you asked me to do. So there's that. We can renegotiate for changes. But yeah, based on the budget and what you asked for, damn right, this is the best I can do. And if you need to go somewhere else, I understand. And there's just so many things out there that you're going to find, because you're a creative person, you're going to be vulnerable to a lot of things. It takes courage to do what we do, to start with nothing and create, because everybody is very quick to say, well, I would have done this and I would have done that. You wouldn't have done shit. You didn't know what to do until I put it in front of you. Okay. And you're going to get a lot of that. And nowadays, I used to be very defensive, obviously, hair triggered, spring loaded. Nowadays, I just sit there and smile. It's like I'm reading you up and down, one side and down the other. I already know more about you than you're ever going to know about me, or even know about yourself. So be aware. Any other question?
I do have a similar question. Aside from being discouraged, how do you handle from time to time the feeling of getting burnt out of doing something?
That's I'm fortunate to have a support group of one, my wife, who's also an artist. She knows me inside and out. If you're on your own, you know when you're being mean to yourself. You just have to listen. And again, like when you're psychologically looking for your keys, walk away from it. You're going to sit there and go, I can't. Every moment is precious. I got to get this. Shut up. You can take an hour. You can take half an hour. Go outside. There's a beautiful sunset. You know what? Go outside and stand in the rain and just shake it off. And just know that you're doing the best you can. And, be honest with yourself. If you're doing the best that you can, always leave something in the tank. My father told me, don't always give 100%, because if you're really good at what you do, like my 80% is as good as somebody else's 100%. And if I'm having a bad day, if I'm feeling burnt out, if I'm feeling a little weary, I've still got like that 20% in the tank. I haven't given it all. But nowadays I'm of the mind that, like, if I'm feeling sick at work, they tell me, hey, just punch out. Don't work. It's okay. We'll get it done. One thing we learned during the pandemic, I learned, and a few people learned it too, the time that we're told we have to do stuff. Like I was working for a shop remotely, and I had a question for my supervisor. I came up against this thing that I was building, and I had a question for my supervisor, and after an hour, I didn't hear back. After 2 hours, I didn't hear back, and I came up with my own solution. And it was something that I could defend, something that could defend itself. And I turned it in, and the guy said, okay, this is great. But what that taught me was I didn't hear from my supervisor till the next day. So when they tell you we need something by the end of the week, there's a little bit more time padded into this. There was a time when the deadline was the deadline. You need to have this done or we're dead. Then at some point, the deadline became the day that you found out what the real deadline was. because we would bust ass, tear up a crew, and drop this across the finish line and go, okay, we did it. And they'd be like, okay, now that we have more time, what we were going for was, whoa, 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 no. What do you mean more time? What we delivered right now was designed to be delivered in this 2-week time. If we'd have known we had 3 weeks, we'd have designed something and given you for 3 weeks. Don't think for 1 minute that we can take this 2-week effort now and modify it to look like a 3-week effort, because it's going to look like crap. And so that kind of stuff happens. So you just got to kind of tell yourself to listen to yourself, that if you're burning out, truly burning out, take a break. You know, I don't know what it takes, you know, meditation, watch a movie, dance in the rain, pet your cat, you know, walk your dog, just something so out of what we do that it clears your mind, so you can come back and go, oh yeah, here it is. Because there's a time when I'm building a model that I used to be up until like 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, where I finally realized at one point that, okay, everything that I build from now on this grind I'm doing, I'm just going to have to rebuild it in the morning. So I'm going to bed. And because that would happen. I would be up all night, and then I'd come back in the morning and look at it and go, well, who did this shit while I was sleeping? It was you. It was you. You didn't walk away. So it takes discipline, and it's going to take experience, but just listen to your body. You know when it's telling you the truth.
I think one of the things I learned from you, honestly, early on was, and I remember you saying this to me, Greg, when I have to start thinking about what buttons I have to push, it's time to walk away.
Yeah.
And I've used that so much in my life, because literally if I'm having to figure out, because you guys all know, when you know the software, you can just slam through it and you're just doing click,
muscle
click,
memory.
Everything's going, it's going fine. The minute you have to start thinking about, okay, wait, where is that stupid menu again? It's time to take a break, you know, because it's going to take you 50% longer to do the thing that you would be doing if you didn't have to think about it, if that makes any sense. So that's
a good point. Listening to your muscle memory. And the fact that you guys are learning like Substance Painter and ZBrush, for crying out loud, ZBrush that goes out of its way to be different from every other program on the planet. So I get it when I'm shifting from ZBrush to Substance Painter. It takes me a while to get my muscle memory back in track and keep going. But when you're in the same program, like when I'm in Maya building something and I start losing my muscle memory in there, stop, go to bed, walk away.
Absolutely. I wanna say something. I kind of add to that. One thing that I've learned while practicing is that sometimes the best thing you can do, like for practice, is to take a break. Like if you're not making any progress, take a little bit of a break, come back to it with a fresh mind and fresh eyes, you know?
No, absolutely. It's like anything else, you know, if you were out there breaking rocks with a mallet, after a while, man, oh, Jesus, I almost took my kneecap out. You would sit down, pour some cold water over your head, take a break. It's no different. I mean, my wife laughs at how soft my hands are. I haven't had calluses on my hands in over 30 years because I haven't had to do any manual labor. I drive a mouse all fucking day. I sit for a living, for crying out loud. But don't kid yourself. What we do is stressful. It's hard. And just because you're not sitting here sweating over the keyboard and growing calluses doesn't mean you're not scarring yourself. You need to, we would do these pushes, like I say, for pilot season. You would do pilot season, you would grind. I mean, it would be like straight 80-hour weeks. I broke the record twice at the company I was at for having over 100 hours in a week. And when I broke the record, I broke my own record. And then when the show is over and we deliver, then we get some downtime. And my wife and I, you know, my wife would take me to an art show or we'd go to a party. And I'm the one guy in the room while everybody's drinking and everything. I'm the one guy in the room sitting there feeling like something's got to get done. I can't just be sitting here. Your body's not used to that. You've trained your body so much that I feel like I need to. Are you sure you don't need the dishes washed or something? Or are you sure that people can get out the driveway? Let me move my car again, you know? And it's like, stop it. You know, you got to train yourself to relax. And I'm saying this out loud because I need to be better at that. And trust me that it won't do you any good as you get older. It manifests itself.
I've often said to these guys, or I've said it more than once, but let your subconscious do the work for you as well too, because like, and you know, there have been times where I do stuff and it's exactly like Audrey, what you were saying. You get burned out, walk away. Literally, you guys, I will literally go walk away. I can't do it here 'cause I'm not at home, but I'll go take a nap. Like literally go lay down, close my eyes for 20 minutes. And so often the answer arrives. It's like, that's it, you know, and just to take that moment away, because oftentimes you can be just sitting at just hammering away at the keyboard and nothing is happening. And it's like, and the answer is there, but your brain just needs you to back off and deal with it. And then when you have that breakthrough, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Now I'm engaged to go hammer on for the next 10 hours, you know. So,
and if you're working with a team, take care of each other.
yeah.
You know, if you're working with a team and you see somebody burning, if you see somebody having trouble with something, and you have to be very tactful about how you approach them, because that insecurity might kick in on them, like, oh my God, they caught me. It's like, hey man, you've been doing really good. You've been doing really hard. Why don't we go get a bite to eat? Let's go get a cup of coffee. You know, just be a friend. Because it helps you too. And one of the things what's good about working in a studio environment is that it is a team effort. And one of the things that it's a knee-jerk reaction for me. If I come out of dailies, they come out of dailies and I'm sitting there working and somebody says, hey, the building looked great, dude. I just say team effort, because none of us do what we do alone. And panic is contagious. When one of the things I try to tell people is, if you're going to be in this business, get used to the smell of burning hair, because there's going to be a lot of people that run around with their hair on fire. People that don't understand what we do. Sometimes they're producers, sometimes they're supervisors. And you need to get used to the smell of burning hair, because that attitude, that panic is contagious. But equally as contagious is calm. Try to be the calm in the storm. You know, try to be the person that halts the madness, that just has the better attitude, that just speaks to, hey, it's not that big a deal. You know, we knew this could happen, whatever. And if you can't say anything calming, just don't join the panic, because a lot of it, there are so many self-inflicted wounds out there that can be avoided. And a lot of it we just do to ourselves based on our own insecurities and stuff. So if you're having a good day and everybody else is starting to panic, do what you can to calm it, or at least not participate in it. And if you'll know you're in a good shop when that's not happening. If you're in a shop where everything is a priority, well, if everything is a priority, then nothing is. And you've got a runaway train. If you're working in a shop where there's a lot of overtime usually is the result of somebody not scheduling properly, or somebody who can't say no to a client. And, you know, finish your gig there, but maybe you're in a toxic environment. One thing I'll say about your generation, when I was growing up and your generation started coming into the workforce, there was a lot of, oh, you know, they can't handle the work, they're too soft, you know. We had a situation where a guy's mother came into the work interview with him, and we were like, are we hiring the mother, or are we hiring this guy? And I even saw on a news report that there was counseling available for guys like me to know how to deal with that. And I had a really bad attitude about it. Like, no, this is boot camp, man. This is a job. But I got to say, I was wrong, blind wrong, because right now, as your generation has evolved into joining in the workforce, it's that attitude that they brought with them that part of the Me Too movement, part of the, hey man, my off time is just as important, if not more important than this job. There's been this really big mood swing in the atmosphere in shops because your generation has filtered into the workforce and brought that mindset with it. And I thank you for it. And I apologize for being wrong, because my mom was a mother. My mom was a woman. My first wife, every woman I've dated, my current wife, they're all women. That women were being disrespected. They were the way they were in the workforce. It was in an environment where you couldn't just say, hey man, if you're not happy, find another job, because that didn't solve the problem. And what I'm telling you right now is, if you get into a workplace where you think it's a toxic environment, get another job. Yeah. They're out there, and there's a lot of places out there treating their people right. And your generation has a lot to do with that tide change. And it's a better workplace for it. And I think, I don't know about other workforces it may or may not have filtered into, but in our entertainment industry with the LGBTQ community, all of it has elevated everybody. And the people who are still cranky about it, too bad. It is a better environment.
So, anybody else got any other questions?
I have a statement.
Okay.
So if you you get that feeling where you want to all I'm saying is you want to do this thing so very much, but you feel dismotivated to do it. Anyone get that feeling?
Yeah, all the time. Sometimes you just gotta push through it, and then sometimes you just gotta walk away.
Are you saying like when you're working with when you're working on something and it's not working for you?
It's not that. It's when you want to do something you like, you just don't have the energy to do it.
Well,
it's just how I feel all the time. It's just a statement.
Yeah, well,
quick statement.
It's a lot of it, like my energy level drops, and I find it's that I'm not exercising enough. As I say, we sit for a living, and a lot of my drive comes from my creativity.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think we ask too much of our creativity, and some of it is physical. Like, you got to eat right, you got to exercise, you got to find out, are you sleeping well at night? If not, why? Does your work, do you feel rewarded in the work you're doing? And again, these rewards have to be self-induced, because you can't really count on other people to give you that shot, especially early on. And so a lot of, if you're not happy about doing something, some of it may be creativity driven, some of it may be physicality, some of it might be like there's a lot going on in your head. I will tell you this, when the lockdown occurred, nobody knew what was going on, man. The world broke and went mad. And we all were forced into this place where what happens next? We absolutely didn't know. And what my wife and I found was that our years as freelance artists had sort of trained us for this, to deal with the adversity of not knowing what's coming next. Where's my next paycheck coming from? How long is this going to last? And we had our creativity to escape in. I could dig myself into my art. I reopened, after many, many years, I reopened the Unreal Engine and did a project in that. And I'm not going to deny it, man. I was hiding. I was running away, because what was going on beyond these walls was outside of my influence. There was nothing I could do to stop it. I literally would swim to the deep end of my pool and scream my ass off and come out, shake it off. And again, I've got a support group of one. My wife and I were in this together. So, you know, be social, be with your friends. And if it doesn't solve the issue, it may help you to recognize what it is, because usually it's not just one thing. It's a mixture of things. You're not satisfied with what you're creating. You don't think there's enough time in the day. You don't think you're getting the recognition, and it all manifests itself into something that keeps you up at night. And you just have to be diligent about picking those things apart. I'm a firm believer in not solving a problem by causing three more. I used to drink. I used to do drugs many, many, many years ago. And I found it far more creative to solve my problems by trusting my art, by testing my creativity. And I'm not saying that works for everybody, man, but I think the search for happiness is an ongoing process.
Yeah. Good question and good answer, honestly. So let's do like a couple more questions, and then we'll let Bill get back to. I know you have a lot to do, so
I'd rather do this, but yeah.
all right, this has been a lot of fun, actually. Okay, so I actually have a question. So one of the early on, like when I first met you, one of the things that, and I use this in my class a lot. I refer to it as the Arance principle, which is if I go out and get hit by a bus, and you referred to it already in this class. Talk about taking notes and how important that actually is, because that does speak a lot to the team that you work within.
Yeah, it's back in the day. We didn't have like coordinators. We didn't have computers and stuff, and a bunch of different things to keep records. And it just came down to, you know, when you're working on a scene, and I'm talking strictly from a 3D point of view, but this can apply. But like you would set up a scene and you would do a test render, but you would write down notes on, well, this is what I'm going for. These are the settings that I changed. This is what I'm doing. These are the results I have. You can find the files here for this scene. You can find the files here for this scene. And certainly somebody who knows the program can open it up and see, well, where was he saving his files to? And where was he doing that? They can do the triage, obviously. But I always went, as Greg says, the philosophy that my friend John Van Vliet trained me on, which I referred to as the boot camp at Available Light, the company that he ran and I worked for. What if you get hit by a bus? How am I going to know what you were doing? And my answer was, well, I'm not going to get hit by a bus. So, okay. And it's that thing where, like, if I call in sick or I have an emergency, that somebody knows, hey, just go to Bill's black notebook on his desk and pick up where he left off. And obviously, write so it's legible. Don't write like a doctor, you know, because it doesn't do any good if people can't read it, or type it. That's always better. And now we have wiki pages and stuff for setting that stuff up in and leaving our breadcrumbs. So if like I've had some emergencies in my family over the last year where I had to, they didn't tell me I could have, they gave me a leave of absence, and they knew to go to my black notebook and pick up where I left off. Another modeler had to just be able to plug in, and it didn't take them a day and a half to do the triage and go through my scenes and try to find my breadcrumbs. They could just go to the notebook and go, oh, here we go, here we are. And that's part of being different than everybody else. That goes beyond like learning the software and learning the tricks. You know, it's all part of showing up and being engaged, knowing how to be part of a team, knowing how to recognize that the team depends on you as much as you depend on them. And you always want to be the solution and not the problem. We all know people that are quick to critique. It's very easy to say, well, you did this wrong and you did that wrong. And what? Yeah, right. We don't need anybody to point out the problems. one of the things that I do is, rather than go to my supervisor and say, hey, this is going to be a problem, I'll try to figure it out. And that way I'll go to him and say, hey, I recognize this as a problem and I came up with this solution. And, you know, if it's a solution that I can defend, that can defend itself, my supervisor is happy as hell, because I didn't bring him a problem. I brought him the solution and I've already implemented it. Now, obviously I've got the seniorship to be able to take those chances, but you can do it too. Just go to somebody and say, hey, I'm recognizing this and I'm thinking I'm going to fix it this way. Do you guys have a problem with that? And they'll listen. And, you know, when you're doing those kind of out of pipeline thinking, out of the box solving, leave breadcrumbs, write notes legibly.
It's very important, guys. You work within a team, you know, and that happens all the time. So,
and it helps you when you're working on your own too, because like as a modeler, when I was freelancing as a modeler, you know, they asked me to build something, I build it, I shade it, I turn it in, and off it goes. And by the time they're animating it and comping it into their shots, I might already be 2 shows down the road. I don't want that thing coming back to haunt me because, like, hey, dude, this is broken. This isn't right. You know, it's like, and that's like knowing not just what they want, but what they're going to want next. Like, I'll tend to, and Greg will testify to this, I will tend to overbuild. I've gotten to the point where I can build highly detailed in a timely manner. And to me, it is better to do that, because when I send this thing down pipe, if it's overbuilt, it's easier for an assistant to jump in at the 11th hour and strip away all the shit they don't need than have me go in there and build it up at the 11th hour. Right. It's always easier to anticipate that we may get close to it. I specialize in building what I refer to as danger close models. Like on Picard, I did something where they wanted to bring the camera in through a window of a building that didn't exist. And so we built the building fine, but as you're getting closer and closer and closer, that windowsill, the glass planes and everything was going to come right by your face. And naturally they said, well, give it to Bill because he does that stuff anyway. And it's always a challenge. How close can you get to the model? How close can you get to the model? And anticipating what they're going to want next.
That's awesome.
Any other questions?
If nobody else is gonna go, I'll ask some. How do you get by with like creator's block, or like you just sit down and you're looking at your model and you're like, even you take a break from it, you come back and you're still looking at it and you're like, I got nothing.
It happens. It happens. And the first thing I'll say is reference, reference, reference. If you're building a something that doesn't exist, if it's a spaceship, and for instance, and it's a junky piece of, it's not like some polished spacecraft or something, it's something junky or whatever. Get photographs of garbage trucks, diesel trains, anything that's going to give you that flavor, that palette. Because a lot of times when I start running into that block, as you say, I rely a lot on my reference. And sometimes it comes back to that thing we were talking about earlier, where you just completely have to change gears. I mean, I'll go in the other room and watch a Bugs Bunny cartoon and just take myself out of that mindset, you know? And that's not to say like I've had models where I'm trying to figure something out for days, for weeks, and I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it. And if there's nobody around to help me, you're out there on the tightrope, or actually the razor, working without a net. And you have to just kind of like, don't give up, you know? And also I'll be the first one to go to my supervisor and put my head on the platter, show them where to cut and say, look, I'm jacked right now, man. I don't know how to get around this. And they might say, hey, that looks fine. okay, wow, I was too much into my head. Or they'll say, well, let's get so and so in here to see what they think, you know. But I can't stress the importance of reference enough. It's so much fun to build that you always just want to get in there, start building. No, 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 no. Take at least a day to start gathering up your reference material. If it's something that exists, I mean, Jesus, with the internet, you can Google anything and you can get pictures of anything, more pictures than you want, pictures that you don't want. So just gather up all that reference material, because you may not look at it all at once, but it's getting burned into your subconscious. You're starting to get an idea of your model. And I'm a true believer that regardless of what field you're in, what lighting or modeling or texturing, your art will speak to you. Sometimes it says, hey, you're doing this wrong. Sometimes it says, leave me alone. Sometimes it says, go back to your reference. And sometimes it says, I'm done. You know, and sometimes a lot of the frustration, because we're so self-motivated, you may have already figured it out and not know it. But if you're standing there, it depends on where you are on the project. If you're there at the very beginning and you've got this block, you definitely got to get reference. Even if it's something that doesn't exist, find things in nature that remind you of that. Like if it's some alien thing, look at jellyfish, look at animals in the forest, look at some of the fish that are down at the bottom of the ocean that nobody's ever known about until a few weeks ago, sort of a thing. You know, get out of your box, get out of your head, anything that gets you a fresh eye. And I hope that helps, because it's something that happens constantly.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a story about how James Cameron, I think he took a tour of the bottom of the ocean just to get inspiration for Avatar.
Well, he was going down to the Titanic. He was spending hours and hours down at the Titanic. I got to work with James Cameron on the thing that he did afterwards, the IMAX screening of Ghost of the Abyss, where they went back to the Titanic and they shot a bunch of footage down there. They took their little mini subs down into the bowels of the ship where you couldn't find it, and documented stuff. And we were supposed to build 3D sets based on this stuff of what it looked like now, so that he could do transitions from back and forth of it. And it was an interesting ploy, because we had a shot that wasn't working. It wasn't working. It was very similar to the previous question. It wasn't working. And James Cameron, people have been trying to paint their way out of it, like doing matte painting work or something with a texture. And James Cameron wrote a strongly worded memo to all vendors. I did not go 3 miles to the bottom of the ocean to have somebody paint what they think I saw. Whoa. Okay, so we won't paint. And I was trying to solve something. And James Cameron's visual effects supervisor, he was in the hot seat with us. I mean, it got into a screaming match in dailies one day, and all our asses were in the hot seat. And the guy would come, the visual effects supervisor, he would come by every day and say, what have you got? And I said, nothing I can show yet. He'd leave me alone. We'd never worked before, and he gave me that kind of trust. And I was trying things and trying things and trying things and trying to get it up to IMAX resolution. I finally came up with a solution where I did a texture map, mapped it onto this thing, rendered it bigger, went back and painted on that, rendered it bigger, and went back and painted on that and rendered it bigger so it would stand up to IMAX scrutiny. And when I finally had something that I could defend, the guy came in one day and he said, what do you got? And I said, I got this. And he said, okay, looks good. And I said, but you need to know I painted it. And he said, well, let's run it anyway. This guy is putting his reputation on the line, trusting me like that. It goes up in dailies, you know, and all you see in dailies is you hear the voices in the dark. In this case, it's just Cameron's voice in the dark. And he's got his laser pointer zipping and zapping around. And my shot comes up and it's quiet. And he says, well, this finally looks better. And he goes, this over here and this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 blah. And then afterwards, he wanted to do a meeting of what we had done and how it was going on. And I'm sitting right next to him looking at the monitor. And this is a guy who knows programs as well as you do. So he knows when somebody's bullshitting. And he said, so how'd you do this? And I looked him right in the eye and I said, I painted it. And I had my boss sitting behind me and his partner sitting behind James Cameron, and I could hear the air suck out of the room. And James Cameron looked at me and he said, well, you obviously made it work for you, so keep doing it. And I was like, sure. And inside my heart was pounding like crazy. And to back up a little bit about our insecurities and everything, up until I got that job, I was always a Titanic fanatic ever since I was 9 years old. But at that point in my career, I was ready to get out. It wasn't challenging to me. I didn't like what I was doing. I wanted to get out. I was going to find something else to do, and I didn't know what it was. And they hired me on this. And because it was the Titanic, and I knew the guy that was hiring me, I thought, yeah, fine, I'll do this. But I went into it with the wrong attitude, because I don't care. And the first day that I went into dailies, and I got a lot of respect for James Cameron. I like the work that he does. I like his attention to detail. He comes in, he sits down, the lights go out, and my heart is pounding in my chest like never before. I used to be a cross-country runner, and my heart was never pounding in my chest like it was pounding there. I knew people could hear it. And all of a sudden, I got this smile on my face. Well, I obviously care. I obviously give a fuck. I still care about this. And it was just this epiphany. We're like, okay, maybe this is the last job I do, but I'm going to care about this one. And that's what I mean about don't be afraid to fail. Stick your neck out. So many people won't even sign up for the school you're sitting in right now. They won't learn the programs that you're learning right now. And they're depriving themselves of a dream, maybe. And catching dreams is a hard trick, because sometimes the dream doesn't measure up to the reality, or the reality doesn't measure up to what the dream is. How could it? We're creative. The dreams we come up with are the best. And I got to tell you, the dreams I've had that I've pursued and I've caught, they're pretty good. And I wouldn't have gotten there if I was afraid of failure. And I've failed big time. I've eaten my crap in every flavor it comes in. And if you learn from it, it's okay. Your reputation may take a ding, but there's a lot of people out there in our tribe that'll go, yeah, but he tried. He tried. And he came up with something that nailed it pretty close. And maybe that's enough. So that's my war story for the day.
That's a great war story, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Bill, dude, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
This has been it's been a phenomenal time with you guys, and I hope you guys really appreciate it and understand. I mean, he has so much experience, so but we'll have to do it again at some point.
Yeah.
And
let me know. Because as I say, as members of the tribe, you're going to find yourselves in a position sooner than you think. You get to share some of your experience with other people. You get to pay some of it back. And that's what I'm doing every opportunity like this that I get. There were a few select people in my career who took a little bit of time out that made all the difference in who I am today. And to be a member of this tribe in good standing, don't keep secrets. Share this stuff. Share it. Because there's people out there that are on the ragged edge of giving up, and they're better than they think they are. And I'll tell you this right now, each and every one of you, you're better than you think you are. You're capable of a lot more than you might be limiting yourself to. And you can take that for what it's worth. But I've seen it happen time and time again in me, where somebody trusted me in a way I wouldn't have trusted myself, and I excelled. They got money out of me for it. I got money out of them for it. But more importantly, I grew as an artist, and I've got something